now. I used foul language in promoting this webinar, and so I'm curious what your reaction was to that and why you came today. So if you want to randomly send a little note in here and tell me why you came and what you thought of this title for today's presentation, I would love to hear it. But I am going to ramble on for a minute with a little bit of an introduction. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm really excited to do this. This makes my week to hear what folks are working on, thinking about, and to share this really compelling stuff. And this is number 4 in a series. This one's called F Your Beauty Standards, and this is part of a whole series focused on marketing the adolescent and young adult well visit. Because if you are in the state public health system, or even local public health probably, you are aware that one of the national performance measures, National Performance Measure 10, asks states to increase the rate of young adults and adolescents who receive a well visit. And so this group that I work with, the Adolescent and Young Adult Health National Resource Center, is funded by HRSA MCHB to support states and any groups that are working on this goal. Folks on this call probably know me from way back. The group that I work with here at the University of Minnesota with my fearless colleagues, Rena Large and Kristen Teipel, have been supporting folks in the adolescent health community for years and years and years. And we continue to do that, but with an emphasis on National Performance Measure 10, the Adolescent and Young Adult Well Visit. Now, if you are concerned, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not really working on that well visit thing, and clinical care, not my deal, no worries. I think all of the stuff that we're talking about in this series applies to almost any public health topic. I need to focus and ground this on the well visit itself, but I really think you're going to see the application across the board. And there's a couple places where I'm calling this out. And as you can imagine, if you know me much, that's not really my expectation either. Do you know what I mean? I'm much happier in youth engagement and youth development and that sort of thing. So this is a real cool opportunity for us to weave things together. Hey, Carol, thanks for the comment about society setting high standards for girls, hard to live up to, and that whole idea sits behind a lot of this work. Okay, so what have I not said about the series or the center or National Performance Measure 10? I think that's pretty much it. There's a lot more. Oh, here we go. Here's Melissa Taylor, part of a COIN team. Oh, thank you, Melissa. And that's the part I did not mention. This center, because of the funding from HRSA MCHB, is in turn funding and supporting a group of states who are functioning as a COIN, and that's a whole nother webinar to explain what COINs are, so save that for another day. But basically, they're all coming together to work on this performance measure, support each other, have common strategies, have common data sets, evaluation, blah, 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 get technical assistance support, people like me, people like UCSF, people like AMCHIP, people like UVM who do quality work. And so that's all going on in the background. If you are part of a COIN and you've come here and you haven't done much with communications yet, I'm your gal. So use this as a jumping off point and let's get together, talk, and make something happen. Okay, so here we are, F Your Beauty Standards. I'm going to ask in a minute who has seen this before, but what you're seeing on the screen here is a screenshot from Instagram, obviously, that is sponsored by a woman named Tess Holliday. She doesn't actually run this Instagram page, site, what do you call it anymore? But it was her idea. And F Your Beauty Standards, this whole area and this whole hashtag is going to be filled with women who are not, I don't know how to do this word now, conventionally thin, whatever, putting up pictures of themselves. And this is, of course, extremely radical and triggering for a lot of people. This gal is kind of the person I identify as being the real visible person of late. This has been an issue for a long, long time. I'm sure you all know that. But Tess Holliday was one of the people that made it very, very visible. She started that hashtag. She started that Instagram page. And part of what gave her a lot of traction and visibility was the fact that she did get signed with a listen to me, mainstream thin person, I don't know, again, got to be really aware of my language here. Oh, here, they have mainstream agency down here in there. And she is not just a size 14. Tess Holiday here is a size 22. Some people would say even bigger, depending on. And she just had a baby. It's adorable, fabulous. But you see her all the time in the news because she makes waves and she stands up for herself, as is evidenced in the pink text box, which is sort of the way women of this size, of which I am one, full disclosure, are going to talk about the issues around their presentation of themselves and their bodies. Who's heard of Tess Holiday before? Or who's seen this hashtag? Can I get some more hands? See hands coming up. Carol, Kate, Jenny, excellent. Any reactions, any thoughts? If you want to put them in that chat box, please let me know. Ooh, a bunch of people have heard of her before. And I'm also, as usual, looking for pushback because I'm going to take this to its natural conclusion here, and it would be helpful and useful if there was somebody that came on the other side of this. So let me go to the next slide, though, and ask you all, what is the connection here? I know you know I'm kind of wacky about this sort of stuff, but can you draw the lines between this whole F Your Beauty standards and healthy at any weight, or fat acceptance, or lack of body shaming, or acknowledging multiple body types to what we do, specifically the well visit, or what we do generically in public health? I know some of y'all are working on obesity prevention. How does that fit into this? Is this contradicting you? Is this contradicting the nature of the well visit? Because what happens at the well visit? This is the question of the moment. And I'm going to move on and do a little bit more introduction and see where we go. But, oh, I'm excited. I'm seeing comments. You know I like your comments. Hold on a second. Let's see what else we got there. To shame those who are not conventionally thin. Love this word, conventionally thin. Huh, made that one up. Change the way we're supposed to see it, right? Can anybody push back? I mean, you go into comments on these sections, on these places, and what you hear a lot of is, no, you cannot be healthy at any weight. It shouldn't be weight and size, but health. I think we have proved this at the point that thin people can be unhealthy and fat, right? So Jenny Blake, that's a thing that we see a lot from folks doing the advocacy or doing the discussion here. Ranges of body sizes, not a single ideal weight. Lecture at well visit does not help. Yes, again, speaking as someone who has been there, pretty well aware of my size. But if doctors don't bring it up, do they become complicit? And what is the way to handle that then? It shouldn't be about weight and size, but health, right? So maybe there's another way to get at it. Maybe bringing it up isn't the right thing. I don't know. Adolescents that are fluffy tend to shy away from professionals who tell them you're old, the older you're fat, lose weight, right? Exactly. Is it going to be a barrier for them to get in the door? Range of healthy body sizes, not a single ideal weight. Lecture, yeah. Accepting and noticing big swings are also unhealthy. Right on. And I think we are at a weird, not a weird, but at a place of convergence, right, for what we do and what is happening out there in the world and being attentive to them. And as Carol's saying here, we need to listen to them, meet the client where they're at. And how do we do that both with you all as a public health function supporting clinical work to do it, right, and with our own public health work? I mean, we all know we have to stop with that obesity word in the general public, but what does that actually look like? Does healthy self-esteem motivate a healthier lifestyle, right? I think that Tracy's point is really well taken, and there's tons of research on every side of this issue. And even every time I go through the comments on this, I'm drowned in, well, wait a minute, yeah, obesity, this, negative health comes. That said, fat shaming, this, mental health outcomes, oh, it triggers bad eating habits, it triggers this. Where do we balance that out? And you're going to hear me say it a couple times on this call is, don't we play a role in helping people tough that stuff out? And is our inadvertent emphasis on some of these issues feeding it, a bad word choice, promoting it in a way that maybe isn't as productive as it could be? Anyway, I'm getting a little bit on the soapbox here, so I'm going to back up. But thank you for the comments. I really, really appreciate them. Okay, let's see. let's go to another slide here, make the connection. Okay, folks that have been on these calls before, this is the time when you can check some email because I'm just going to be reviewing where we've been at. Folks that haven't been here before, all of these are on, they've all been recorded. And I'm pretty sure, Rita, jump in if I'm making this stuff up, but part of the fun of this whole thing is like seeing what people's comments are. So I believe you can see the comments if you go watch the recording. Can't you? Can you?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Brina says yes. Excellent. All right. So the very first episode that we had on this was really talking about how the millennials and founders, which is basically adolescents and young adults of today, right, are disrupting the way marketing is happening and the way the marketplace works. And the foundation for this entire series is that Glynis, your faithful ex-advertising executive, did not go to the standard public health sources for this webinar series. I went back to my old friends in the marketing business. And on one of the handouts we've got for you up here that you can download or we will send you, you will see the kind of places that I've been to and looked at from the commercial marketing world. Usually this market research costs tons and tons of money, like this one I want to buy is $15,000. And obviously we're not going to ever get that kind of money, but I've been downloading executive summaries. And so Rena collects all the links when I'm done. I have not done a good job in sending them back up, but everything I cite and talk about on this call is generally free and something that you can get at yourself to look at and play with and think about. But no, they are not peer-reviewed journal articles, and I'm sure my research teams here at the University of Minnesota would have a lot of problems with methodologies and all that sort of stuff, but again, it's the world I came from, so there we go. Episode 2, co-creation greater than youth engagement? Answer is yes. In this episode, we talked a lot about the fact that the big trend now with marketers is not for marketers to create a product and an ad campaign and sell it to young people. It is to co-create the product and co-create the ad campaign with the consumer and use that entire process as the marketing mix. And there's a lot behind this, including the rise and prevalence of how-to videos on YouTube, like this version of Outfit of the Week with PB Bunny, which raised many, many, many feminist hackles, including my own, as always. Maybe today we'll balance that out a little bit. But that's where we were going. And we were contrasting this to our own values around this idea of youth engagement. And what was kind of cool for me was that the marketers really upped the ante on this one, right? In youth engagement, it's all about how do public health engage young people? And the co-creation thing is like, okay, how do we change what we do and how we do it to make it so young people are part of the team? Which maybe that's just linguistic stuff right there, but it does feel like a conceptual shift. So again, thank you, Carol, for the comment, and other people that want to jump in and share any comments on what you did in these things would be always appreciated. Number 3, relevance equals experiences plus sharing. That is me right there in the purple shirt, by the way, and my colleague Kristen Teipel and her daughter Maddie at a Minnesota Lynx game. Hope y'all are WNBA fans. That's going to come up again today. At any rate, this episode was based on the marketing research that's showing how, specifically with millennials, to a degree with the younger generation, right, that to create relevance between a marketer's product and young people, you have to give them the opportunity to experience it and to share that experience. That millennials in particular are not as big into buying stuff as they are into buying experiences. I would pay for a ticket to the concert before I would buy a new piece of jewelry. What I'm reading lately is that the younger adolescents, not millennials, the generation after that, we'll talk about it, it's shifting a little bit back. It's shifting back to the things I buy and wear and promote about myself, and use reflect my identity. So it's going back to some things that we've heard before in other generations. So this session focused a lot on how do we then create an experience and make it shareable around health or the well visit so as to be relevant, since we seem to struggle with that a little bit. Okay, or a lot of it. Okay, almost there with the introduction. got to tell you this, we're not going to belabor it today, but here's the thing. You probably came here thinking, oh, this is going to be about like how do I communicate and promote public health and get my public health message out to young people, and it totally, absolutely 100% is. That said, when we from my world, say the word marketing, we don't mean just what you say about it to get people to change a behavior or come to a well visit or go to a health fair, right? What we really mean with marketing is the whole thing, like thinking all the way through how you get people to buy your stuff versus just what am I going to say about my stuff to make somebody buy it. Because there's more than what you just say about it, right? And over in the black section here, you see there's 4 Ps. Price, product, promotion, and place. This is totally old school marketing. If you Google this, you'll find some people have 6 Ps and some people have 8 Bs, whatever. But these are the ones that I was raised on, so this is how I talk about it. And what we've done, I don't know if it's on the last slide or next slide or not. Let's check it out. Hey, friend, move. Oh, here it is. Okay. What we've been trying to do is analyze the well visit through this entire lens, right? What is the price of the well visit? How does our product actually look? Then promotion is the thing about the communications, and then places like if you were marketing a consumer packaged good, that would be like where in which grocery stores is it in, and is it in an end aisle display or is it in the main display, blah, 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 blah. So place being the 4th P here. And I'm going to go over to the handout instead. I think it's a little clearer here. But what we've been working on collectively since the beginning of this grant is filling out this marketing analysis. And what you can see here is all of those pieces as we've been brainstorming and adding and trying to figure out what really do we need to do to get this well visit rate increases. So, okay, I'm going to try to use a little pencil, something. Over here, you can see we're talking about the audience, right, and all the different kind of audience involved in the well visit product itself, not just adolescents and young adults who are the people we want to go, but the parents and caregivers, which depending on the age or the capacity or the status or whatever of the young person might be an even more critical decider than the adolescent or young adult themselves. And then, of course, the systems of care themselves, right, like the nature of the practitioner or what happens at the clinic, as well as the insurer and the larger hospital systems, all of those are audiences in this mix. When we get down here to audience mindset, though, we're really talking more about what do young adults and adolescents think. Obviously, you've noticed that's kind of the focus where we're trying to stay today. Yes, parents, totally valid, super important audience. I'm not that interested. So there are folks in the coin that are working specifically on parents as audiences. IO is doing a bang-up job. If you're interested in that, give Rena and I a little note, and we will push you towards the people that are working hard on that front. But so when we look at this audience mindset, what we're revealing, and these are notes that I have kind of put a high level on based on work that other focus groups have done. Thank you, Iowa. Thank you, Oregon. A bunch of other states have done focus groups to say, what do parents and young people think about this well visit? And the answer is pretty much, wait, I'm supposed to what? And yeah, not so interested. I go when I'm sick. And I got a sports physical, so why would I need that? Promotion down here is sort of what are the standard ways that people are talking about the well visit. All right, nothing surprising there. Now take a look here, though, at price. You know, the ACA and what we know from the systems is that an annual well visit, depending on your periodicity schedule, should be free every year. And so maybe financially it's free, but are there other costs associated with it? I know you know where I'm going because most of us have played in sexual health fields for a long time. The rest of it, this whole section here, product components, product deliverables, product benefits, product name, product experiences, all of this is sort of the way we've been trying to encapsulate what is actually included in this well visit. And it's everything from up here. This is the stuff pulled from Bright Futures. This is the standard, the expectation for what's supposed to happen in a well visit with an adolescent or a young adult. We're trying to think through, well, what do you walk away with? You know, like if you buy a computer, you walk away with a computer that will enable you to do this and this and this and this. What do you walk away with when you have a well visit? And what do you get out of it, right? What are the benefits to you? again, not a lot of clarity in these issues here from the research that we've done so far. We're also really challenged by the fact that it has different names everywhere you go. Nobody uses anything consistent. And then, of course, the really big one, which is generally these clinical settings are not super welcoming, awesome places for adolescents and young adults. Okay, I've been talking a ton. I'm going to take a little breather and go back to the slides right now. If anybody wants to jump in and share something from what we've been talking about or working on, please do. I'm checking out your comments right now. I see Carol. And she's going to be sending the links. And right, the involvement between the parent and the child, we all know that that needs to start early and be consistent throughout. One little piece of good news that I'm not putting in this slide set is that that this younger generation of adolescents, the Gen Z or whatever we're going to call them, have much closer relationships with parents than they've tracked in a long time. That this generation is much more likely to confide in their parents, go talk to them about things that other generations might have considered personal, private, and not worth sharing. And you're seeing that in some of the research that's coming out of there's a big group that's doing a lot of research on this because they want to sell the vaccinations. Alrighty, here we go then. And we just talked about that. Oh. So bottom line from this stuff is, yes, I'm going to be talking about how does this stuff intersect with how we're going to communicate or promote the well visit or a public health issue. At the same time, though, I'm going to be always going back and questioning, what does this mean for the nature of our product? And how does it enhance the stuff we've got here? Because we got some challenges. Specifically, we have not yet found a super compelling benefit or reason that young people should care about the well visit. We just have not seen that yet. Yes, the sports physical enables their participation in sports. Yes, sexual health services enable their participation in sexual health, right? But the well visit in and of itself, not so much. Ooh, it looks like Jenny put something up for us. Thank you, Jenny. Plus says yoga teachers. Sweet. Yep. Yoga lifestyle, no matter what shape. I love it. Thank you. The name. Is well visit compelling? Is well visit, I mean, like, again, that we hear almost contradiction to the concept of the name itself. Checkup is another one that we hear a lot. There's a link between that and the child and teen checkup, right? And do you want to frame teens in the context of little kitty checkups? Kind of weird. Youth-driven marketing, obviously this is the answer to everything as far as I'm concerned. It's always got to be from and about the young people themselves. Challenge then is, how does public health actually make that happen and manage it? And then finally, do the features, attributes, like does the stuff about the well visit itself line up with what young people care about and address the things, and I put this in quote, pain points. I don't mean physical pain. I mean like things that adolescents need, want, desire, or are struggling with, right? How does it address a need or something that they have right at the time that's critical and a priority to them? So you can see we're trying to back our product into what our customer, our consumer needs, wants, thinks about, prioritizes, et cetera. All right, so here we go today. Kind of said all that stuff already, but the three focuses for today is values, diversity, and activism. And again, just as a reminder, what I've been doing is going through as many of these marketers' freebie reports as I can, distilling it down, pulling out thematic ideas that I think illuminate the challenges in the well visit or public health itself. And this one is centered around these three topics today. Again, I'm not going to belabor this chart because folks have seen this many times already, but whether you love this stuff or hate it, what we are talking about here is the idea that there are certain segments or gatherings or groupings or generalizations you can make about the different generations of people going through our time. Can I get a hand for people that identify as a boomer? That probably means you were born before 1964. Here we go, we got boomers. Let's just see who we got here. All right, all right. Excellent, excellent. How about Gen Xers? Can I get a Gen Xer hand up? Gen Xers. It's weird for me. I'm like right on the line between Gen Xer and Boomer, so I like to flatter myself and thinking that I'm more of a Gen Xer, and then I read stuff and nope, I'm more of a Boomer. I don't know. All right, Gen Xers. Gosh, do we have a quorum here? I don't know. Okay, how about who would consider themselves a millennial? Maybe we have more millennials. That would be good. That would be very good. Almost Gen X, almost millennial. All right, Bessie. Yeah, Bessie reads more like a millennial, though, because you're so tapped into all this stuff. That's me, too. Fabulous. All right, thank you for doing that. I'm going to assume, right, I find identity with millennials more. Yeah, and so that's why I say this is generalizations. Boy, easy for me to say that, you know, these things, and they change them. It's literally changed since I started doing this work, right? It was, oh, no, this new generation started in 2000, and now I'm reading it starts at 1996. So, you know, whatever, but directionally fascinating. What I want to point out to you here is that when I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in marketing to parents, check it out, that parents of adolescents are millennials. I know, right? So I find myself with my own bias on that front. And also, can we, do you know what I mean? Like, I think we train ourselves to be thinking, you know, youth culture changes all the time, and we got to keep up, and we got to pay attention, and I'm old, and I don't know, but I got to find out. But parenting, you know, everybody like, oh, yeah, parenting, yeah. And some of the cursory stuff changes, but, you know, it's about parenting, and that's the central thing. Wow, no. The more I read, the more I'm seeing that the way millennials are thinking about parenting and the nature of their parenting is impacting these young people and their perceptions and their generalizations as well. So it's fascinating to me that we've got so much to look at here that is potentially revelatory for the work we do. So another thing we've done on earlier ones is listen to the MTV super sexy video about the generation that comes after millennials. You're noticing, too, that there's an older versus younger millennials. You can see that the time shift is happening here, right? Fully now, I think the most adolescents that we're talking about are in this new grouping that MTV is calling Insights. MTV Insights is calling Founders, but you're going to see a lot of different names for that. So just remember that this is about after millennials. I'm smack in the middle of Gen X, and I have a 10-year-old, but most of the parents, the teens I work with are millennials, and there's very much a difference in terms of communication style and priorities. Right on. And it would be really interesting, Jenny, to hear sometime, like, get a bunch of young mothers that are splitting that area and hear what you guys see and perceive from that, because you are in the middle of stuff. I don't know. Fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Moving on here. So this is from a marketing group called Mr. Youth, and this was a really hot shot New York marketing dude. He got bought out, et cetera, because every marketer in the world is trying to figure out how they're going to crack into this marketplace. And he did this analysis from 2011 about, and this is millennials, right, how their experiences shape their visions, their values, their goals, et cetera. And so I just want you to take this in for a second and think about this in contrast to yourself and where we're going to go next. All right. Take a look at those shaping events or influencing events, shaped beliefs, the market crash, the Facebook explosion, 9/11, Apple innovation, and the tsunami. One of the things I've been reading lately is that this next generation of young people don't remember 9/11. They didn't live it. They didn't live it. They don't remember it. They do remember the market crash because it impacted their families and possibly their, you know, older brothers or sisters or that sort of stuff. But can we consider what such a significant shift in their experience of the world is by not having been through that as a USian, as a US person? You know, and that's where these marketing folks dig down deep and try to really get into, well, what does this mean? The millennials have been characterized as having this vision for trying to influence the world in a positive way. And they are perceived as doing that by tearing it apart and deconstructing. So this is another slide or another pullout from the Mr. Youth publication. And you can see these things pushed up a little bit larger. And look at the inclusion now of marriage equality. And that's one that I've been reading lately too, where the younger teens, right, the group after the millennials, has always lived in a time or has always been aware of this being an equity or equality issue that's defined how they're thinking about these relationships and stuff. And so when you see the mind-blowing stuff about gender and sexuality, this is a driver for that. Bessie is pointing out Hurricane Katrina is not there. Very interesting point, and I did not notice that. And I think that is telling in and of itself, isn't it? Because who did Hurricane Katrina impact most? And I'm not saying that marketers are just not interested in poor people or people of color. They're interested in the money. So, and I agree. What about Hurricane Katrina? That would be really interesting. And because it was regional, right? Right. And it was regional, except that it was such a message on some of those larger issues. Yeah, that's a really good point. I highlighted the crash of 2008 too, because we're going to be talking about activism. And like, as I look at all these things, how do these intersect with the activism trends that we're seeing right now as well? Interesting. Are you noticing I'm not having as many answers as I have questions? Welcome. Welcome to the webinar series. Okay, so this is the newest one that I found, because last time somebody said, what was the date of that? And I looked and I said, oh my God, we can't be using 2011. That's not right. So here is hot off the internet, 2017. It's a whole new group. They're called Futurecast Millennial Marketing. And this is the generation after millennials. And those little words with the weird brain and all that sort of stuff, they've reframed them as the pivotal generation. MTV called them the founders. Gen Z is the thing that most people are talking about, or iGen. But here these guys come up with the pivotal generation. And their insight here is that this new generation is a mix of traditional old school values. You can see them up there in red, with nonconformist, ultra-liberal, radical, but in a very accepting, like, well, of course we need to be about Black Lives Matter and LGBT rights, right? Both of those things there. I have never seen the word polyethnic before, did not have time to research it, but I am fascinated. What does that mean? And where are we trying to go with that? I know where fluid is coming from because I see it a lot in gender discussions and that sort of stuff. Uniqueness is a word that you're seeing a lot tied into this generation, because there's a discussion about how they are very intentional about the phrase is curating their identity. They would rather be unique than cool or fitting in. That's interesting. Anybody? Polyethnic? Anybody? Anybody? I know. I desperately want to know. All right, here we go. Here's another pullout from that same publication. The question is, like, how different all these things are. Oh, here's polyarray, belonging to, comprising, or containing many ethnic groups. I mean, it certainly feels more inclusive than biracial. And is it like an intentional nod to the straddling of race? Do you know what I mean? Is that? Yeah, how is it different than multi? I don't know, but these are all the questions. Or, okay, back to Carol's point, maybe it's more their concern. Yeah, maybe we don't care. It's just like, yeah, it's all of this, and it's interplay and it's interconnection. Yeah, right? Or distilling down into, you know what, one race, human race, or race is irrelevant. You know, I don't know. I'm just waiting to see more what they're going to say about it. All right, cool. Okay, here's a chart. Why am I showing you this chart? Oh, because this is one place I found where they're going to contrast the values across generations. And you can see there are some differences across, and some that would surprise you. Just take a second and look at this. Is there anything in here that surprises you? I mean, we've been leading up to the racial equality difference in values here, right? Also, gender equality. Sexual orientation equality, though, that one's so much lower. I don't know. I wonder what that means. And then look at how immigration reform is so low on this one for this new Generation Z. And labor laws. I mean, do we dismiss some of those because they're just not there yet? I don't know. Okay, wait, I'm looking at Haley's comments. We're still working on this ethnicity one. Right? Awareness of many. Yeah, see, I think if it's going to Kate's point, if we're trying to it's more of a mindset than a descriptor or yeah. Ability and willingness to identify with multiple ethnicities, sweet. Interesting to consider the use of ethnic and not racial. Possibly no race, but a nod to the importance of ethnic customs that will continue. Ooh, that is very interesting. Yeah, I'm not well schooled enough in that field, but that seems to be one of the underpinnings of where we're thinking about some of these equity concerns that we might have in our community as well, yeah. Sometimes it's hard to see the importance of something like labor life. We never experienced life, though. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know exactly how to read this chart, but I do think that it's interesting to see some of these differences by generation and some of the consistencies. Oh, Amy's point. Interesting to pull them again after the Trump administration has focused on immigration, right? And overall, I'm just dying to see how some of the because whether you're going to play the political game or not, it certainly is elevating attention to issues like immigration or trans people's equality with that ban, and you know what I mean? Like there's so many things that are getting brought up again. It's going to be very, very interesting, just like with the whole ACA thing. Okay, awesome. You guys are really great. I'm really appreciating all your comments. The problem is that race was made relevant by pretty severe social injustices, so not acknowledging it makes it feel like it's being ignored or, yes, totally 100%, absolutely. And I would love to have more of this conversation because of the framing and the research around how you discuss equity and disparities, right? Because you totally do. Like if we ignore it, then we're almost ignoring the entire history of racism. But if we continue to focus on it, then we seem to be pointing the finger at people because of race. Or not we, but I mean, do you know what I mean? It gets interpreted that way. 100% agree. Thank you for that comment, Jordy. Okay, awesome. Moving on. Moving on. Come on, Glennis. All right, so given the nature of these values and given the importance in young people's lives, right? They're building identity around these sort of things, and as we're going to see further on, right, they're shaping their activity and their activism and who they engage with and how they do it around these values. Marketers need to respond. And one example of that, right, would be something like the CW starting their own channel called Good, CW Good. And, you know, I've been through the listings of the shows they have on the Good, and there's a couple that seem like they are kind of intentionally pro-social, but, and yeah, I don't know. They also call attention to Jessica Jones, who's on the Jessica Jones bandwagon, right? She's a superhero, but she does a lot of social issue work, and there's commentary on sexual assault issues and all that sort of work, right? And so next time you're watching one of these teen shows, consider what are the marketers trying to tap into here that's in alignment with the values and the issues that are topical and relevant for young people. Who's been coping with that whole 13 Reasons deal? Is everybody on top of that situation? Does anyone want to type something in the chat box about, that's the right name, isn't it? 13 Reasons. That's about the young person that committed suicide and left the note. I have not watched it, but I've had many public health conversations. Thank you, Michaela. 13 Reasons Why. All right, we'll save that for another day. but this is what the marketers are talking about. And I think the critical phrase in here for me is raised with a sense of fairness and wanting to align what they do and talk about and hang out with, et cetera, with that value around fairness. And for a variety of other reasons, they do not have this sort of color blindness, I'm going to deny the reality of the situation because it's visible to them. Here's Jordy. Some clinics are handing out pamphlets, to accurately address the subject with youth. That would be very cool. Have we gotten that circulated in adolescent health worlds? Because I bet folks would dig that a lot. Okay, thank you, Jordy. So that's marketers' response, but what's the public response to this? Here's my version of it, olds respond. So I just want to be clear, I am an old person, and if you are a seasoned, experienced person who does not like the name olds, then forgive me. But I'm going to keep using it because we call them young. It doesn't seem fair that we get to call them young people and then I can't call myself an old person. I don't know. Anyway, memes all over the place, stuff on the left really bashing young people, and that's a common thing, right? Oh, get off my yard, you crazy kids. And this is just another version of that. But the participation trophy deal, has anybody run into that? Oh my goodness, right? So like back with the slide before this, you know, when the marketing people are like, you know, they were raised with fairness and that's what they're trying to enact and it wants to align with values. And that's where participation trophies come out, right? Everybody gets a trophy in millennial culture because we all did it and everyone's equal and you played, I played, we all played hard. We all deserve some recognition for that, in fact. That is this whole idea that fairness is the most important value is mocked roundly by olds and cynicals, and it's not just olds, obviously, right? Dear millennials, welcome to life. That participation trophy you would get as a kid, it doesn't work well here. Bessie or somebody, could you explain to me why this duck is always in the memes? I don't know. There's a joke behind this joke that I just don't know. This kid is in everything. There's like a bazillion versions of this that set up the what olds do, drive up the federal deficit for 30 years versus what millennials have to deal with, the bill that those folks hand us, right? The olds graduated from college and get hired versus, you know what I mean? So they're just going through, and there's like 20 of these. I had to cut it down. In my first job, I only made $15K a year. That's the old person, but that was actually equivalent of $47K. Do young people get that kind of salary today? No. And of course, young people are better than this at old people. So here we go with young people's response. We don't want participation trophies. We want to overthrow neoliberalism. Or this one, it gets really intense, right? You can't be anti-participation trophies and pro-Confederate statues. They're the world's biggest participation trophies. And there are a lot that link war memorials, including the Vietnam Wall, with participation trophies. Again, fascinating where the young people take this and their insight around context, which, and you know, if you've been in some of my trainings, right, it's all about making people aware of context. Context, right? So, onward. What does this mean? This whole thing about these values and these shifting values and the young people's values and the opportunities that they create. Here's what I think the implications are, and I'm going to be asking what you think too so that we can continue this conversation. First off, I think that whatever, the public's generational biases are at the heart of the problem here, right? Because, look at that typo in there. I think they mean trophies, but anyway, or maybe not. Maybe that was part of the joke. At any rate, what I'm trying to get at here is that the lens through which I look at these things, or young people, or their behaviors, or their activism, or their priorities, or all that sort of stuff, is generationally biased. How can I see that clearly and be supportive of it? and deal with my biases to get there. And so I think within public health, we own that, right? That we come from a different perspective. We are driven by our public health lens as opposed to the young people's lens. How do we filter, or how do we take off our glasses, or how do we look through it more clearly? I don't really know what the actual transaction method here is, but I think it's essential because we continue to try to do these things in the same way. I mean, how many people are still making flyers, y'all? We can't keep doing that. We can't keep using the word obesity or shaming teen parents or whatever it's going to be. So I'm putting that aside. The other thing is that even though this is emphasizing difference, there's a lot of sameness in these values, right? But are we hung up on the difference? And is there room for us to go and try to find that sameness and make alignments that way? That's what comes into my head when I go through all of this research. What goes through your head? Give me some notes, and I'm going to tell you, given that that's what's in my head, this is what I think we need to do. Somebody already said but that is, we need to be where they are. And I mean that specifically, like what do they care about versus what we care about, right, in terms of issues or priorities, and also, of course, the media. We cannot make flyers anymore. We need to be on social media and using it, and the implications of that for us in public health are vast. This is not something we can ask our administrative assistant to do or pull down a Word template. This requires attention and focus and connection, right? We as olds or as public health professionals don't always have the access or connection to young people coming at it as ourselves. Not particularly relevant, and we're not always that well connected. So how do we get where they are at? More on the how in a minute. But how do we then follow their lead, right? Take their issues and priorities and replace ours with them. And sometimes I think it's only a framing shift, right? That they are interested at healthy at any weight and we're interested in obesity prevention. Those things do not have to be parallel opposites, right? We want people to come in for well visits and feel positively engaged with their health. If that means stripping out the judging, finger wagging, just, down, that's not so good behavior, kid. If it means getting rid of that stuff, maybe we need to. I don't know. And how would we do that? And second, can we give up our stuff to support theirs, right? I mean, if their number one top issue is jobs, why do we not make that ours as well? And I know you're like, well, because we're the public health community, but we all know because of youth development that jobs ties into that, or opportunities for jobs, or mentoring, or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? There's something in there that we can use or leverage or support. And then finally, what I said before, can we look for, find those connections or overlaps and be able to use those in how we do what we do? Here's Tracy's note. It's a missed opportunity to not have this generation at the table with us. Perhaps they have takeaway messaging strategies that we are not even considering. 100%, Tracy, and that really is like, I get to this place where I don't even want to recommend to y'all, oh, you should do, start a hashtag or create your own meme generator or an app, because I don't think we can conceive of it the same way they do. And I'm not saying that they're going to be able to conceive of it and create it and implement it without our support. But you, 100%, we are never going to consider the kind of stuff that they would. And that's why I'm really interested in young people's perspective on these calls, right? Because you're as close as we can get. Okay, there's my implication. So we used to do this as mashups. Do you know what I mean? Like, what do we, if you think about these values issues with young people, how does that connect or inform what we do with the well visit? And so this was my way of trying to get at it a little more concretely. And these, I'm looking at them now, they feel a little bit like platitudes. So I'm going to dig down deeper in the next one. These are a bunch of diversity slides. I'm going to go fast because I know you all know this. But fact of the matter is that this generation of young people are going to be the first minority majority. Did I say that right? I know there's a right phrase for that. I can't remember it. As well as the fact that a bunch of their friends and colleagues are also going to be in danger, not just because of the color of their skin, but because of their immigration status or their paperwork or whatever that's going to be. And so these two things are going to be daily experiences in the lives of young people that are not the daily experiences of old people. The other side of this, size of this isn't that good. Oh, oopsie. The other side of this is where I started before, and that is real challenge and questioning of the cultural standards for beauty and bodies and health and what that means. And you see it from the first examples that I gave you from that model, but I want to also introduce you to Chantel Osahor, who was the Washington Huskies power forward. She was an All-American, played in the Sweet 16, and you can bet that she would walk into a doctor's office without the context of being a professional athlete and be called obese. And there are a number of women with this size of body that are professional basketball players now. And as it turns out, this size of body is an asset in their athletic performance. It's a problem too, but it is also an asset. And what do we do with that? This is not just a women's issue anymore too. Men are elevating the attention here as well. Anything from dad bods to the perfect man photos, which doesn't that remind you a little bit of that Dove campaign, right? It's coming up and it's becoming more and more visible, and it's less easy to dismiss this than it has been. But what is our role as providers of well visits or public health practitioners in jumping into this? Ability status, disability, ability status. I'm not sure what the right word is for this, but again, the activism and the access and availability that we have on social media to engage with these communities is increasing their visibility and increasing our understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about diversity. And I know this has been around for a really long time, but it's becoming mainstreamed in a visible sense, right? Did anybody see Michael Phillips during this whole healthcare shenanigans, fandangos? Did you see the, what is the name of that? ADAPT, I think, is the name of the disability activists who went to see their senators and got dragged out from their wheelchairs, et cetera. And Michael Phillips here put out this tweet calling on the, I think these are all MSNBC people, to say, hey, pay attention to these issues, and then was on television promoting his message. He has this adorable tweet on his website about Cher retweeted him, and it totally made his day. But this young person right here is an activist that got his message to a national community and validated the disabled community, right, as a key player in this issue. Where so often these mainstream conversations just ignore or eliminate or silence them. Amazing and awesome and inspiring. And you can imagine now, as I'm going through these, one of the things I'm going to be suggesting to you is, and it was Michael, not his family members, oh my God, it was just something else. These groups and these multiple groups are going to become, because they're the activists, are going to become the people we need to befriend. We need to be Michael's friend. We need to support Michael and his outreach and his blog and his tweets and wherever he wants to go, and see how we can support him being the messenger and him in the platform. And then, of course, the one that really, 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 really freaks out old people is young people's broadening understanding and accepting of gender and sexuality. Who's this? Anybody know who this is? Yes, it is. That is Jaden Smith. And who is Jaden Smith? Jaden Smith is Will Smith and, oh, what's his wife's name? Somebody help me out. Will Smith's son and Jada Pinkett. Thank you. All right, Michaela's right on it. She's got all that stuff ready and geared up. And there is Jaden Smith. Is Jaden Smith straight or gay, or is he trans, or is he cis, or what? What is he? And young people would answer, I don't care, whatever. Where I, as an old person, am all like, oh my God, how do I identify him? How do I identify? Look, I'm using more bad language. This was a Hartman Group research study, and I have the whole thing in the notes, so we can get you you can connect to this actual study. Yes, it's in there. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Can you read those? I didn't include the one with all the terms. But the one that you're seeing here with sexual orientation is completely heterosexual, completely bisexual, completely homosexual, and then 1 to 5 degrees of bisexuality, asexual, prefer not to know, right? And this is, again, the study where they've got like 20 different terms for gender identity. Are you gender fluid? Are you transgender? Are you gender queer? Are you gender this, right? Like just a billion different terms, things I've never even heard of. Pansexual, hadn't heard of it. Now I know that what's her name is pansexual, so now I've got something to ground it on because I'm an old person. But you see what we're getting at here is there's just a totally different way of thinking about these things, and it of course rubs up against old people's perspectives. I love this. Who has seen the Trans Student Educational Resources website? This again like brought it down to a level that I or other old people could get to and say, oh, okay, wait a minute, right? Because there's so much behind all this stuff that challenges our old ways of thinking. We in Minnesota are just putting out a big series around the fact that we can finally quantify how many young people identify as transgender, genderbread person. I want to see that one too. People have been talking about that. You has come out as pan. I'm thinking about it. Gender unicorn. Okay, so olds cannot break through the gender binary. Super hard for us. So things like this, where you get to explain it a little bit, are super valuable. But again, what's our public health role in this stuff, right? And how do we craft a well visit that doesn't stumble and fall when we get to this issue at the clinical level? Because if I'm anywhere in this spectrum other than on one clear end or the other, right, like Bessie's saying, affirmative talk, all the forms that we fill out, even the discussion of booking the visit, right? All of that stuff is going to play into this picture. And again, like there's probably a smaller group of young people that are going to be really harmed by our narrowness, but the message to anybody is going to be negative. And here's Jenny confirming, okay, pansexual has been around for a long, long time, and I'm not that young either. Ha, ha, ha. I've identified for about 15 to 20 years, right? I mean, come on, who's this teen celebrity? It did say someone is pansexual. What's her name? And she's on the celebrity show with she's on The Voice, and she stuck out her tongue. I don't know. I'm Miley. That is correct. Thank you, Miley. Thank you. Everyone's jumping on. Okay. Thank you for helping the old brain. Aha. All right. So here's the other side of this, right? I'm going to let you read this yourself, but unlike prior generations where validation, social validation happened, like because you'd see like, you know, everyone wore the same kind of jeans, and so I could wear those jeans and be cool, or I had these bows in my hair, and that everyone wore the bows, and so I was validated, and we did this, and we did this, right? A lot of the social validation was what you experienced in person, et cetera. Now that social validation is coming from technology, social media, the internet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the more visible these groups are, thinking back to Michael Phillips or Jaden Smith or even Miley Cyrus, right, the more visible that these issues and topics are for young people, the less likely they are to feel that isolation, that challenge, and that marginalization. So again, what do we do to support this? Right? When you as a public health agency or department literally use the word pansexual, you have just validated something. I know, and yes, Jenny's back to listen very carefully, right? And I know it's not an easy thing for you to do, and I think that's the kind of challenge that we got to be talking about here. And specifically in terms of the well visit, right? I mean, what would happen if we started to frame the well visit around each of these different groups, right? We're going to have a gender expression well chat, or do you know what I mean? Like an emotional relationship, emotional relationship interaction or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. And yes, Carol, does everyone know that Carol's from Texas? But again, I'm calling out Carol, but I think most public health departments, you know, it's a scary, scary, freaky thing to try to get into these areas. So now here we are back at old people's understanding or values or perceptions are the problem. And I totally agree that that is a different webinar of how can we collectively infiltrate or push or, do you know what I mean, start illuminating these issues into our management, into the broader set of olds that hold the reins and all the money. Okay. Next month we'll do that webinar. Putting transgender on a marketing flyer, got a professional development training canceled. Ooh, see, right on. I'm sorry. But what do you guys think? Should she do that or not? Do we do it and know that there's that risk? Are there smarter ways to do it? And here I think is another intersection between the well visit, the clinical stuff, and our public health work, right? If medical doctors are doing it, does that make it easier for us in public health to do it? Do you know what I mean? Because they're like the standard for health. I'm pretty sure my agency wouldn't allow that kind of talk. Yes. That is horrible. From Jenny, I saw we got to be smarter. You rely on the name or rely on outside partners. Hold on there. Who is this one? Putting transgender. I can't quite get to this last comment here. Agencies were nervous about this, but it was suggested they included rainbow pins, pens, small tokens within the office to show acceptance. Yes. So some of that cleverness, right? I did not know there was a trans flag, right? But trans people know there's a trans flag. So, right? Training happened with support of ACLU and other organizations. That's nice. Yeah, so again, some of these I got to work around strategies. Oh, that's the trans flag right up here in the little logo, now that I know what it looks like. Yeah. But again, like, what is our public health role? Are we the ones that should stand up and take it in the chest because we can? I don't know. But yes, it's got to be a community engaged practice as well. All right, enough. Glennis, we did that. All right, implications. All humans, all health. Ooh, I like that. Thank you, Bessie. So what are we going to do to jump into this social validation game, both as public health agencies and as folks working on the well visit? We do what we must. Yeah, cisgender, real trigger for the olds and the binary stuck people. And I agree. I would prefer not to trick leaders or to subvert or to, you know, slip in a flag so people that know and whatever. I would prefer to be up and standing there and just want to acknowledge the reality of your situation. I mean, you know, there's a bunch of those that you're going to be dealing with right now, right? Sexuality education. Okay, so here's my question is how do we as public health contribute to social validation? And ditto with a well visit. And here's where like my really rudimentary understanding of how this would work would be that we have a giant, massive group of us who are out in the universes spending time on social media platforms using our credibility and our expertise in some way to say to young people like Michael Phillips or, you know, like Tessa, whatever her name was from the very beginning, or whoever, to say, give them a stamp and say, hey, I come from this world, you are awesome, I just want to validate your awesomeness or your healthiness or your whateverness or in some way, shape, or form, give them a public health quote unquote like. I know you're thinking, I can't do that on behalf of my public health agency. I hear that. I hear a lot of like, I don't know exactly how we would get this done, but what I want you to kind of walk away with is, how could you do that? Can you talk to your folks, right, in your agency and think, don't build an Instagram site, y'all. Nobody's going to come to your Instagram site. But go on Instagram, find F your beauty standards and start talking to those women. Ditto Reddit, ditto Tumblr, ditto Facebook, ditto, right? Go search out every youth activist group on Facebook that's working on some of their values issues and say, I love you, you're awesome. Really think that that's a totally valid and important approach. I don't know how to sell that to your bosses, but there it is. Is our product ready for the diversity? We've kind of had this conversation. I know you know that these things are happening. This chest exam flyer was something I thought was brilliant from a local clinic here in Minnesota that specifically calls out and supports trans community. Simple rewording made all the difference in the world in framing them as being ready for the diversity of their community. We can do that. We can do that. And this is fascinating to me because it's not only selling like one of those product features, you know, it's also giving the message that we get it and we're here for you and we're about your stuff, not just the standard checklist, we will do a breast exam annually from the time you are 18 to whatever. And so what could be the equivalent of this for all the rest of the stuff on that list? Now again, I know most of you know this, right, but there's some excellent, excellent resources. The University of Michigan, New Mexico's doing it. Can't remember how Carol did it in Texas, but there's a lot of folks working on improving the quality of the clinical well visit for young people specifically. The sexual health community has done a bang-up job on many of these things, but now folks are working on it with the well visit as well. Okay, so what do you think? Anything more to say here other than your charges are, you're doing the contracts in Texas, awesome. Your charges here are to go think about how your public health agency could go do this social validation for young people from these different pockets of diversity or whatever you want to use to describe them, right? And second, knowing what we know about these things, what do we need to change, improve, shift, reframe, adapt, et cetera, in terms of what we do based on those. Tons of resources for the second, pie in the sky ideas for the first, unless somebody's jumped in and started doing that already. Yes, I already said all this. Sorry. Oh, but I forgot this one. Okay, so this was better language. This is the one I was just talking about where we go out and validate. Here's the other one, co-create the well visit. Because, yeah, I don't think we can do that by ourselves. So we need to get them in, just like somebody said before. We need to get them in and have them able to figure it out with us. And then second, here's the other thing is, if and when you are going to do outbound communications, right, the segmentation is a strategy that communications folks use all the time. And the idea is that you're finding groups or pockets of people and interacting, and we would call it messaging, right? We would message directly to, you know, the Hmong community in this part of St. Paul or whatever, right? And we would call that a segment or a segmentation. And I called out Hmong as an example of this, right? But I just want to be clear, I'm not just talking racial or ethnic because that may not be a relevant segmentation. Only you are going to know that for your geography on how those segmentations come in. But I want you looking at those based on these concepts around diversity and identity instead of the way we do it, traditional public health way of risk behaviors, right, or just straight up racial classifications or whatever it's going to be, using their own identity constructs as the way we think about them as groups and the way we reach out to them, therefore. Does that make sense? And so a back end to this would be anytime you want to work on that, I've got some sheets and tools, right, that we can do to kind of sketch out what those segments might look like and then how you reach them based on those segments. Okay, I saw something really chunky here in the comments. I just want to go back. One of the key takeaways, oh wait, no, I had two from Carol. Take the old steps to convince our old leadership, data and statistics to take new ways, right? And I would add to that, though, the values thing. I think when we find and can promote the values alignment and then support it with data, we got a home run. Okay, here's from Kate, one of the key takeaways that we were addressing. Diverse population rather than one with common characteristics. Their values are acceptance and we can manage, and that we can message to absolutely. If we're going to address the segments, we're going to spend a lot of time addressing the various components. And okay, so you are getting at one of the really challenging aspects of these marketing jobs, right, is definitely are places where you can find the commonalities. The problem becomes if you think you can effectively engage, let's just say, the trans community and the people lacking paperwork community with the same kind of messages, it's problematic. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's exactly what you're trying to point out, that creates so much work. How do you manage all that stuff? Is that a fair assessment of where you're trying to go, Katie? All right, I'm going to keep talking, but I will comment when you give me another note back. Okay, is this making sense? Yes, that's it. Okay, cool. So again, this becomes an activity of strategy and priority setting. And so I use these tools, right, to start delineating what all these groups might look like. And then to Kate's point, seeing where there's some commonalities, that if we could come in at a commonality, I can ignore the really wide variations, maybe, like the one examples I just gave is like, what? That's too different. But if you can find a commonality, then you create a segment out of that. But it has to be like a real one. It can't be just like, well, I think they would be or whatever. So lots of tools for that. Just push back at me and I will happily send that your way so you can use that to do some planning work. All right, here we go, 2:15. Oh. Okay, so I'm in my last chunk here, activism. I'm going to have to go kind of fast because I spent too much time already. But this is the recent healthy at any weight shenanigan. Who has seen this one? This weekend, Trip here from Miami, Florida, posted this on his Instagram. And this is a photograph of him and his wife, and he included it was a 400 or 500 word comment area, starting with, I love this woman and her curvy body, and talking about his own experience as being challenged by social norms for being attracted to women like this. So, any reactions? Any reactions? You know where I'm going to go, don't you? Yeah, of course you do. Is anybody laughing? Is there a laughing symbol? I don't think there is. Is anybody laughing? Yes, there's a laughing symbol. Smiling and nodding. Can I get some, like Michaela's giving me a little feedback here. I'm going to keep clicking through these so you see what the story is, right? They put their Chubby is Everywhere is a great book for people. They put that thing out there. A lot of people jumped in and were like, oh, that's so awesome, and that's true love, and what a great guy. And then the activists jumped in and were like, yeah, no, what? And then the meme folks jumped in. And here you can see the Mets, and they all pick up the first two lines of his thing. Mets fans, this is Game of Thrones one, right? Is that what that is? I just assumed it was because dragons, whatever. So between that and the model with the hashtag F Your Beauty Standards, right? It's not just that they have these values around fairness. It's not just that they're, dealing with and living with and talking about the reality of diversity and racism and oppression and discrimination and disability status, but they're like actively out there doing stuff with it. I'm going to come back to this one. And that is, if you want to call it hashtag activism, I don't know. But what you're seeing more and more, right, is attention to these topics and issues and young people jumping in to express their opinion and identify themselves and build their visibility and their identity around and aligned with their activism for these values, right? And it's shifting the way marketers are responding. That Y Pulse Body Positive, right? This group called Y Pulse, and you can get their free newsletter that they, if you go up there, they have a cool conference, and they put on a newsletter with all these millennial and teen trends, right? And that's the one that cost $15,000. I've been trying to get them to do a webinar. A webinar would cost $5,000. So you know who they're trying to get on board with them. It's the marketing folks. And so this 80% would rather see a brand advertisement with models who have curves is impacting the marketers more than anything else. So you see that social validation thing going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, getting to a place where, right, even the whole construct of plus size sizes is being challenged at this point. So that's the marketer's version of social validation, which is really just market responsiveness. Can you see how I'm like trying to get us to think about what would be our version of doing that as well? The campaigns where you stand up and identify yourself as being, right, shout your status, or what was it, tweet your abortion, or the women that jump up and talk about the fact that they've been sexually assaulted, right? All of that stuff, putting both your identity out there and your voice. DoSomething.org, there are places and websites, and again, this is kind of sleazy marketing stuff, right, that are popping up to take advantage and tap into that desire for activism. You go on to DoSomething.org, you can sign up and do like little micro work projects. You can see how this is like ivory items on Craigslist to stop elephant poaching. There's everything there from collecting denim jeans to give to people to make products with to just go sign this form, blah, blah, blah. And of course, DoSomething.org has a giant corporate back end, right? But that's their way of, again, identifying and tapping in to the theme of these values and identity. I'm trying to get to this next comment here. How am I doing on time? Oh! Back to that tweet. If a man gives a curvy woman a compliment, it is real, but if I give one to myself, then I have a false sense of confidence. Just another way we as women are taught to see our value through men. Right, absolutely, absolutely. And you would have a really joyful experience in the comment section for that. Yes, anyway. Okay, so you see the 2015 hashtags. I bring this up because look at all the things that are about activism in here, right? Wasn't this for LGBT marriage? Black Lives Matter, we all know this apparently is for the tsunami. Sandra Bland is the woman who was going to take a job down in a college town and was and died in jail. Died being, we don't know what that really means. Pray for Paris and the terrorism things here. I think jobs was about the unemployment rate. So, so one of the things that you get from the olds, and probably a lot of you, us, our people, right, is this idea that this kind of activism is not real or not valid. And I am not going to tell you that I think that hashtags and liking and forwarding is going to be the revolutionary stone that overthrows corporate America or capitalism. Absolutely not. But what it is going to do is continue to elevate attention to these issues and to these ideas and concepts, right, to the point where they become normalized and we've changed the nature of how we talk about things. There's, let's see if I can, I'm going to read this to you because I kind of overlapped it. There's been plenty of debate over whether hashtag activism is useful or whether it's just a way for lazy people to pretend they're making some kind of difference. However, what's not debatable is whether trending hashtags get the attention of mainstream media and, by extension, the general public. They do. Would awareness of events in Canada, Hong Kong, and Ferguson, Missouri have skyrocketed without Twitter? Would anyone besides a select few know what neurotypical meant if it weren't for the internet? Would anyone be able to pretend to care about ethics in video game journalism without Gamergate? Okay, I know that one's a little bit obscure. Happy to explain if anyone wants to stay afterwards. But what they're saying here is that the nature of social media is bringing things onto the larger media agenda, right, that would not have been there before, simply by volume and visibility. And a lot of that is driven by young people and their values and their desire, need, and commitment to expressing those values as part of their identity. And this is critical in the fight for social justice, right? DeRay McKesson says it. This has been a theme throughout time, right? We as white people or mainstream or whatever it's going to be can continue to ignore systemic oppression or institutional racism until it is in our face, which is what has happened through Black Lives Matter. this chart, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. They can geotag, right, the tweets around a given topic in terms of their prevalence and intensity, and they can do it over time. So you see that little slide banner where it says 11/24/2014? You can track the rise of the Black Lives Matter hashtag, or I can't breathe, or any of those things, and see how they would start in one spot maybe, right? Start in Ferguson, and then boom, just go everywhere across the world. It's fascinating. That website, I've got it in my little things. Hold on a minute. We will get that to you, I promise. Sorry about that, Jenny. I can't remember where I got this from. Okay, I'm moving on. There was somebody that had a really nice comment, though. We were in the process of creating adolescent social media materials focused on being active, no body shaming words, but now I see we are not on task. Love the idea of positive comments on young people's Instagram tweets, et cetera, rather than us believing we will reach them. There will be youth input in messaging, so I look forward to their transformation. Yes. And it totally is long-term. I mean, I really want to buy into that, right? Like there's an immediate satisfaction of you making a campaign and putting it out into the world versus you having to go and like be like, yes, I clicked on 72 youth websites today, right? I know there's a back end of this that we got to still figure out, but I really appreciate that you're thinking about it and where it's going to go. Thank you. That was very nice. Okay. Another example, right, and I know that a lot of you are also involved in sexual violence and sexual assault issues, and this is another one where, oh my gosh, I got to wrap up here. Why are we trying to build our own campaigns and our own outbound and outreach efforts when they are already doing it? Right? If this is what's happening, and it is what's happening, isn't it our responsibility to stand behind them and not try to recreate the wheel and do something, do you know what I mean, made by us, forced on them? So, implications. Totally willing to be called out on this because y'all know I'm crazy about young people and I really, really, really buy into this, and a lot of my hope for the future is wrapped up in the fact that I think they're awesome. But this activism around their values I see as being a super important part of their experience of the world, where they're engaged and passionate and committed to it. Maybe not committed like go lay down in front of a tank, but committed in a way that's around where they're at. And this phrase, a curated part of their identity, where they're very carefully considering in their own identity development and expression what they want those badges and pieces to be. Fascinating from a developmental standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and from where we come from. What does health have to say here? And this is what really blows my mind. In all of this reading that I'm doing, the body weight stuff is the closest I have come to any really thoughtful discussion around young people's conception of health and wellness beyond the medical model. Because I really believe that the medical model is not what's resonating right away with them on this level of engaged, passionate activism and identity. Does it come in through athletics? Does it come in through other identity elements? Where does it come in through, and what are these deep understandings that they have that we are not seeing? Like for everything that I'm talking about here, why can't I find that for how they're viewing their health and well-being and interaction with healthy community? Like you see it come up somewhat with environmental issues, right? You see it come up somewhat with the violence, police violence, state violence, impact on people, young people and their communities, right? But the traditional stuff that we are looking at, I don't know. Oh, I forgot to say, you know, way back when I'm like the traditional values versus the, they got traditional values and sort of young things and it's all combined. Some of these people are ascribing attributing the decrease in drinking, binge drinking, sex, and sexual risk behaviors, et cetera, on that, the resonating of those old school values. I don't know what I think about that, but I just want to share that. All right, so they're already talking about it. They're already organizing around these things. You know where I'm going to go, given the fact that we're hung up on sharing and having experiences, just trying to think about how we then would fit into that element of this, right? So what I would strategically be doing is identifying these activists or fan groups or segments, the ways we were just talking about that, right? Figure out who they are and where they are and who, like the leaders or the little, remember that chart that I had where it's like not the loudspeaker model, but the sort of connection model, like who's the little hub that then reaches the next group out within that area, right? So I find the really key disability activist young person and hook into them, knowing that that person is going to reach out beyond themselves to others, right, and have that impact. So I would ID those people and those groups and start relationships with those key people to start supporting what they're doing and weaving our messages in and learning from them about the relevance of what we're doing. The second thing I would do is try to figure out through those relationships and those interactions how to reframe or adapt what we're doing to suit better, right? Maybe we need an element to the well visit where we're testing for environmental toxins, because that's something that comes up over and over again when young people are thinking about environmental issues. Or maybe we need to have not a BMI test, but a healthy at any weight test, right? Where we can give them all the other things as an opportunity to talk about what's healthy and discuss the potential impact of their weight or not, right? Within identifying those activists or fan groups, looking for us to really recruit and pay, by sponsor I mean pay, those people that are going to be the voices and the advocates and the channels by which we communicate and engage. And then finally, both curate, right? And by curate, I mean like pick from what they've got and what's going on and all over to package up and then signal boost that out to the rest of the world so that you're supporting their own work and giving it a context or frame that fits within the public health community. That's what I'm thinking there. How? Call me. Let's talk about how. If any of this stuff intrigues or engages you, call me and we'll figure out a way to approach this together. Because as far as I know, this is pretty bleeding edge. I don't know people who are doing it, but I want to know you if you are. So please reach out to me. The next episode, I'm sure Rena will jump in a minute and tell me when it is, since I'm not so good on details. But what we're talking about on this one is like our traditional public health approach to quote, quote, health literacy, and what that means in the context of young people's status as the quote, quote, look-up generation. What kind of opportunities, where's the overlap, what do we do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, officially done talking. I will stay on this line for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Rena will unmute us, I think. She is going to stop recording us. And hey, Rena, when is the next one? Do you remember? I should remember. Marketing worksheet. I'm looking. But please, you are free to go. Oh, go ahead.
September 19th is the next in the series, and we'll include information for that in the message that we'll send you with the archive links.
You're so good. Thank you, Rena.